Baseball has exactly one phrase that covers 8 completely unrelated crimes, and that phrase is illegal pitch. Under that one umbrella, you've got a pitcher accidentally twitching his shoulder, a pitcher spitting on the ball on purpose, a pitcher rubbing a resin cloud into the air like he's performing a magic trick, and, on the extreme tragic end of the spectrum, a pitch that actually killed a man. Same rulebook section, wildly different level of oh no. Think about how strange that actually is for a moment. No other major sport files its worst on-field tragedy and its silliest technical footnote under the exact same legal category. Nobody in basketball is charged with the same violation for traveling and for a dangerous flagrant foul. But baseball, somehow, has decided that a pitcher whose shoulder twitched in the wind and a pitcher who once killed a man with a fastball both belong, technically, in the same drawer of the rulebook. Let's go through all 8, worst twitch to worst tragedy, and figure out why a sport built on precision still can't get most of its own umpires to agree on where the line actually is. The Balk. Start with the one that ruins most Sunday afternoons, the Balk. In its simplest form, it's any motion a pitcher makes that an umpire decides was designed to deceive a runner on base. And the rulebook lists 13 separate ways to commit one. Everything from failing to come to a complete, visible stop in the set position to switching from the windup to the set without properly stepping off the rubber first. The rule has existed since 1898, and for over a century a pitcher could legally fake a throw to third base and then spin around and throw to first instead, a move that got banned outright in 2013 for being exactly the kind of deception the rule was invented to stop. 13 ways to break one rule is already a lot for a batter, a runner, and an umpire to keep straight in real time. But the actual list gets stranger the further down it you read. A pitcher can balk by throwing to a base that doesn't even have a runner standing on it. He can balk by dropping the ball, on purpose or by accident, before he even starts his motion. He can balk simply by pretending to pitch and then not delivering the ball at all, a rule that exists specifically because decades ago, pitchers realized a fake pitch was just as deceptive as a fake throw, and nobody had bothered to write that down yet. Here's what makes the balk the most chaotic rule in the sport. It is almost entirely a judgment call, and umpires have proven repeatedly that they cannot agree on it even with each other. In 1961, pitcher Stu Miller got called for a balk during the All-Star game at Candlestick Park because a gust of wind literally rocked his body while he was mid-motion. The wind balked him, and the call stood. In 1988, a season now nicknamed the Year of the Balk, after umpires suddenly decided to enforce the stop in the set position rule far more strictly, knuckleballer Charlie Ho got called for 9 balks in a single exhibition game, 7 of them in one inning alone, because his entire pitching motion is built around the kind of pause the new emphasis was specifically hunting for. Steve Carlton, a Hall of Famer, still holds the career record with 90 balks, and Dave Stewart set the single-season record with 16 in that same chaotic 1988 season, meaning the most balked pitcher in history and the most balked season in history are, unsurprisingly, the exact same year. And it isn't only accidental. Kenley Jansen has balked on purpose, twice, years apart, specifically to advance a runner from second to third because he suspected the runner was stealing signs from second base, reasoning that a free 90 feet was a smaller cost than letting the other team know exactly what pitch was coming next. A rule designed to punish deception is apparently flexible enough to also be used as a deception prevention tool, which is either extremely clever or a sign that nobody, including the pitchers themselves, fully understands what this rule is actually protecting against. The single game record belongs to Bob Shaw, who somehow got called for 5 balks in one outing back in 1963. 4 of them came in the same at-bat against the same runner, who Shaw essentially balked from first to second, then second to third, then third to home, one committee-approved base at a time, without the batter even needing to swing. And the record didn't stay buried in the black and white era either. In 2022, reliever Richard Blyer got called for 3 balks in a row against a single Mets batter, becoming the first pitcher in over 30 decades to manage the feat, and getting himself ejected from the game in the process, alongside his own manager, who apparently had a few thoughts about the strike zone that afternoon too. The quick pitch. One level down in chaos, but almost never called, is the quick pitch. With a runner on base, if a pitcher skips the required stop and rushes his delivery to catch a lead runner off guard, that's a balk. But with the bases empty, the exact same rushed, sneaky delivery to a batter who isn't set yet in the box is a completely different infraction, just a ball, no free base penalty attached, under a section of the rulebook most casual fans have never heard of. It's legal adjacent cheating. An umpire has to actively decide the batter wasn't ready, and most umpires, most of the time, simply don't bother making that call. This is the rule quietly sitting behind one of the darkest moments in the sport's history. In 1920, pitcher Carl Mays, already notorious for a deceptive, low sidearm delivery that hid the ball from hitters, threw a pitch that struck batter Ray Chapman in the head as the light was fading at the ballpark. Chapman died from the injury the next day, still the only fatality directly caused by a pitch in Major League history. The quick pitch itself wasn't the direct legal charge against Mays, but the entire episode is exactly why baseball takes deceptive, batter can't see it deliveries so seriously to this day, and why a rule that barely gets enforced still sits quietly in the book as a warning label nobody reads until it's too late. The strange part is how selectively the sport still treats it over 100 years later. A pitcher who quick pitches a batter with the bases loaded and a full count gets a stern look from the dugout at worst. A pitcher who does the exact same thing with a runner dancing off first base gets an automatic balk call and a much angrier dugout. Same motion, same intent to catch someone off guard. Two completely different rulebook reactions, depending entirely on who's standing where when it happens. The beanball. Then there's the pitch that isn't about deception at all. It's about intent. A beanball is a pitch thrown deliberately at a batter, usually at the head, and it is almost never the result of a rule confusion. It's frustration, retaliation for an earlier home run, or payback for breaking one of the sport's unwritten codes. It's different from a brushback pitch, which is meant to move a batter off the plate without connecting. The beanball is meant to connect. The consequences have been serious enough to physically change the sport. Batting helmets became mandatory across the league in 1956, and the ear flap design specifically became mandatory in 1983. Both changes trace directly back to a list of players seriously hurt by pitches to the head, a list that unfortunately includes several careers that never fully recovered. Today, umpires can issue warnings to both benches after a suspicious pitch, and if either team crosses that line again, ejections and suspensions follow, for the pitcher and sometimes for the manager too, if the league decides the play was ordered rather than accidental. What makes the beanball different from every other item on this list is that it's the only one where the rulebook isn't really the point. Balks, quick pitches, sticky substances, all of those are the sport quietly closing loopholes pitchers found in the machinery of the game. The beanball is the one moment where the machinery disappears entirely, and it's just two grown men, 90 feet apart, settling something personal with a 90-mile-an-hour object between them, and the rulebook is left scrambling to referee something it was never really designed to prevent in the first place. The Spitball, the Emery ball, and the shine ball. Now we get to the era where pitchers just did whatever they wanted to the actual ball. During the dead ball era, spitting on the ball, scuffing it with sandpaper, or polishing one side smooth while leaving the other rough were all just accepted tricks of the trade, each with its own name. The Spitball altered the ball's weight and wind resistance enough to make a fastball move like a knuckleball. Ed Walsh built a Hall of Fame career partly on it, posting the lowest career ERA of the modern era. The Emery ball used a scuffed patch to add extra spin, and the shine ball combined both ideas, one side slick, one side rough, to bend the pitch in directions hitters weren't prepared for. For years, the only real deterrent was a $5 fine, a number so small it barely qualified as a deterrent at all, more like a cover charge for the privilege of doctoring a baseball in front of a paying crowd. Pitchers factored it into the cost of doing business the same way a driver might shrug off a parking ticket, and the league mostly let it slide because, frankly, the doctored pitches were making the games more interesting to watch, not less. The Emery ball got banned first, in 1915, after a pitcher was caught scuffing the ball with sandpaper against a Hall of Fame hitter. The Spitball followed in 1920, the same year as the Ray Chapman tragedy, with the league specifically naming and banning the Shine Ball, Spitball, Mud Ball, and Emery Ball all in the same rule. And here's the detail that makes the whole crackdown feel almost performative. 17 pitchers who were already established spitballers were grandfathered in and allowed to keep legally throwing the exact same doctored pitch that had just been outlawed for everyone else for the remainder of their careers. So for a stretch of years in the 1920s, 2 pitchers could stand on the same mound in the same season, throwing the exact same doctored pitch, and only one of them was breaking the rules. The other one simply had seniority. It's the sports version of a grandfather clause written into a rule book that otherwise pretends to treat every pitcher identically, and it quietly stayed on the books until the last grandfathered spitballer retired in the 1930s, taking the last legal version of the pitch with him. The Puffball. Decades later, one pitcher took the same spirit of creative rule bending and turned it into performance art. Gaylord Perry openly admitted for most of his career to doctoring baseballs and even wrote an entire autobiography about it, ironically promising in the book to stop, then continuing to bend the rules for another 9 years afterward. His signature move, invented near the tail end of his career, was the Puffball, coating the baseball in rosin so heavily that releasing the pitch sent a visible puff of white powder exploding out of his hand, in full view of the umpire, the batter, and everyone in the stadium. Nothing in the rulebook technically prohibited it at the time, because nobody had ever imagined a pitcher would be brazen enough to try it in the open. The league closed that exact loophole within the same rule family that already banned the spitball. Perry still won 2 Cy Young Awards, one in each league, the first pitcher in history to manage that, and wasn't ejected from a game for doctoring a ball until 1982, near the very end of a career built almost entirely on finding the one thing the rulebook forgot to mention. Perry's genius, if that's the word for it, wasn't really the puffball itself, it was the years of theater leading up to it. He'd spend an entire outing touching his cap, his belt, his glove, his uniform in the exact same sequence, over and over, whether he'd actually doctored anything that inning or not. Batters spent so much mental energy trying to figure out which touch was the real one that plenty of hitters admitted, on the record, that the psychological game alone was probably worth more outs than whatever he was actually doing to the baseball. The Crow Hop Delivery. Fast forward to the modern era, and the newest wrinkle isn't about the ball at all. It's about where the pitcher's feet are standing when he lets go of it. A handful of relief pitchers developed deliveries that involved a noticeable hop or slide down the mound before release, effectively giving them a running start and shaving a visible chunk of distance off the pitch's actual flight time to the plate, all while technically still being in contact with the pitching rubber when the motion began. The league finalized a rule addition in 2017 specifically targeting the move, stating a pitcher cannot take a second step toward home plate or reset his pivot foot mid-delivery. With runners on base, it's a balk. With the bases empty, it's simply an illegal pitch. It's a strange kind of compliment, really. A pitcher got creative enough with basic physics that the rulebook had to be updated specifically to slow him back down to everyone else's speed. What made the delivery so effective in the first place wasn't just the extra ground covered, it was how little warning a hitter actually got because of it. Shaving even a small fraction of a second off a pitch's flight time doesn't sound like much until you remember hitters are already reacting on a margin measured in fractions of a second to begin with. The league didn't ban the delivery because it was unsafe or because anyone got hurt. It banned it because, for one specific pitcher, physics itself had briefly found a legal way to cheat the strike zone's usual math. The sticky stuff. For decades, foreign substance rules technically existed and were essentially never enforced. Pitchers used pine tar and sunscreen mixtures quietly, and everyone looked the other way. That changed abruptly in 2021, when a spider tack-based grip product called Spider Tack, originally invented for competitive strongman lifters, went from a locker room secret to a national controversy. By June of that year, the league-wide batting average had fallen to its lowest point since 1968, and strikeout rates had hit an all-time high, numbers dramatic enough that the league went from decades of quiet tolerance to announcing ejections and 10-game suspensions within a single offseason's worth of complaints. It's worth sitting with how fast that shift actually was. This was a substance nobody outside a handful of gyms had heard of a year earlier, originally made to help strongmen grip stones the size of beach balls during competition. Within months of pitchers discovering it worked just as well on a baseball seam, an entire sport rewired its enforcement priorities around a product that started its life nowhere near a professional locker room. The enforcement rollout got messy fast. One pitcher lost his grip on a pitch and broke an opposing pitcher's nose. His own manager argued a legal grip aid might have prevented it. Another pitcher, who'd openly admitted to using a sunscreen and rosin mix, blamed the sudden crackdown for an injury that ended his season. And after 3 full years of umpires checking hats, gloves, and belts inning after inning, only a small handful of pitchers league-wide had actually been suspended, suggesting either that the rule mostly worked as a deterrent or that pitchers just got much better at making tackiness look like ordinary sweat. The rule itself technically allows rosin. Pitchers have been dusting their hands with the stuff for over a century, and nobody's ever pretended that's cheating. But the same league memo that permits plain rosin also warns that rosin combined with sweat, sunscreen, or anything else can tip a hand from legally tacky into illegally sticky, and the only instrument measuring that line is an umpire's fingers running across a pitcher's palm between innings. It's a rule that's simultaneously extremely strict on paper, automatic ejection, no exceptions, and almost impossibly vague in practice, since too sticky was never actually defined with a number, a substance list, or anything an umpire could point to besides his own sense of touch. The pitch clock violation. And the newest entry on the list didn't exist at all until 2023, violating the pitch clock itself. Pitchers now get 15 seconds to begin their motion with the bases empty, 20 seconds with runners on, and batters have to be set in the box with several seconds still remaining, where the penalty flips onto them instead. But the detail that trips up even experienced pitchers is the disengagement limit. Stepping off the rubber or attempting a pickoff throw is allowed twice per plate appearance with no cost at all, but a third unsuccessful attempt is an automatic balk, full stop, no judgment call required. The numbers tell the story of a league adjusting in real time. Violations across pitchers, hitters, and catchers combined topped 1,000 in the rule's first season, then dropped by nearly half the very next year as everyone, from AAA to the majors, adjusted their internal clocks to a countdown that 12 months earlier had never existed for any of them. There's a genuinely strange side effect buried in the disengagement rule that almost nobody outside the league office saw coming. Now, runners know with mathematical certainty exactly how much risk a pitcher can afford to take against them. 2 throwovers? No cost. A third, and the pitcher's already conceding a free base if he doesn't get the out. That tiny, publicly known limit has quietly made base stealing dramatically safer than it's been in generations. A rule written entirely to speed up the pace of the game ended up rewriting the risk calculation for one of its oldest and riskiest plays almost as a side effect. 8 items, 1 shared label, and almost nothing else in common. a twitch in the wind, a rosin cloud thrown in plain sight, and a pitch that ended a man's life, all technically filed under the exact same 3 words: illegal pitch. Maybe that's the most honest thing about this sport. It built one rule section broad enough to cover both a joke and a tragedy, and somehow expects the same umpire on the same afternoon to instantly know which one he's looking at. And maybe that's also why the Balk of all 8 remains the one nobody can explain cleanly in real time, even 120 plus years after it was written down. It's not that the rule is badly worded, it's that the rule is being asked to do the job of a lie detector, using nothing but a stopwatch, a rule book nobody's fully memorized, and one person's eyes. And somehow, most Sundays, it still basically works. Thanks for sticking around for all 8. If the Balk rule finally makes a little more sense now, drop a like and subscribe. Genuinely helps the channel grow. And if you liked digging into the weird side of the rulebook, go check out our last one. See ya!